I wanted to make sure before we start thinking about wrapping this up that we did talk just a little bit about gun violence and school shootings. Um, so I've got some experience. We had a shooting in our district, and I got the alert on my phone that your child is in a district where this is happening. And then because I was a substitute teacher, I had to do the active shooter drills, which is just horrifying. And I was an adult when I did it. I can't imagine how traumatizing that must be when you're a child. And then I happened to be with a class that had been in the room where the shooting happened, had several students during an active shooter drill, which is just an experience and a half. And this is the sad commentary about where we're at. I think that I've had, since I was a teenager, a book about a school shooting that I've worked on and off, and I'm probably never going to publish. And I've changed as an artist, but two, every time I would go back to it, would be, do I want to pick up this heaviest of all topics? Do I want to carry this around and have it living in my head 24/7 until I've got a book that I feel is good? And also I said, no, I don't want to live there. How do you approach a subject this dark and do the work to, because you're not just representing our two main characters, we're meeting their families, we're learning what their reactions to this tragedy are, we're meeting the community, the school, people of the school. How do you research something like that to do it authentically, and how do you do it in such a way that you can that you don't, that you look into an abyss without keeping the abyss looking back into you, that you don't take that darkness and carry that around with you everywhere you go?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think that in terms of research, I just read a lot of articles and books about communities that have gone through these tragedies. And I also talked, I was doing school visits for Other Words for Home while I was drafting the She Was Under, and I talked to kids, and all of our kids, by and large, have lots of opinions about this, and it's not something they're hesitant to talk to. It's something that us grown-ups are really uncomfortable, but for them, they're living this trauma. So yeah, they are super traumatized by these active shooter drills, but they also don't have this like EBGB, oh, we can't talk about that. If we talk about that, somehow it like makes it worse idea, which is also, what I see a lot around like the mental health conversation with grownups versus kids. There's like lots of parallels to me. And so I think what kept me going was really, I believe in books as conversation starters. I think they can help crack open these things that are really difficult to talk about, right? Like I think sometimes if you're grieving, if you've lost someone, a story about loss can help crack that open in you and kind of give you this emotional vocabulary to talk about what's going on with you. And I think books broker difficult conversations. And I felt galvanized by wanting our young people who seemed so hungry for the chance to be able to talk about this issue to have a book that would hold space for that conversation for them. And I think that kept it from feeling relentlessly dark, because I don't view the book, as hard as it is, as tragic as what these characters have gone through and are going through, as a dark book. It's actually a book that I think is filled with a lot of hope. And it's filled with a lot of hope. And I don't think this is really a spoiler, because in lots of ways, the book is saying that young people are magic. And I think have the ability that they're going to be the ones that are going to change this because they've had to live this, And I think that I just want to provide a platform for them to be able to talk about it and to be able to talk about it with the grownups in their lives, because I could see like there's a sheepishness, right, around the issue and how they have been made to feel about it. So I don't know, but it's hard. It was a devastating book to work on. It was relentlessly difficult book to work on. And I really reached my breaking point when I was in the midst of really the heaviest part of revisions in March 2020. So the world is shutting down. The state of the world is extremely hard. And what is my writing project? What is my escape project? Oh, I'm going to go work on my book about gun violence. So that was really hard. And that's why I don't think it's any surprised that my next book is much lighter in tone, you know, and is different, because I think you have to give yourself some space sometimes. But I don't know, I come from a tradition of seeing writing as a form, like I said, of conversation starting. And a lot of the books that have made the biggest difference to me are not books that necessarily have a strong message, but are books that ask really big questions about our world. And that's like what I was really aiming to do, is just say, like, does anyone else think about these things? What do you think about these things? And provide a forum for young people to do that. But definitely was never about trying to traumatize anyone or make anyone upset, but more to just, like I said, I think that when I was a young person, I thought of challenging books as empowering books. Like when I read a book that was about something difficult or uneasy, I felt like that book saw me and respected me as a reader, and respected that I lived in the world and had a growing awareness of it. And that's what I think, like, middle grade is such an amazing space to write for kids, because our kids are coming into this awareness of the world, but it's coupled with that like huge heart and that massive imagination. And to me, I'm hoping the book is like an ode to that intersection of increased awareness of the world with tremendous imagination and big hearts. And I think that piece of it, that imagination piece, in lots of ways the book is a celebration of imagination, is what helped me to not feel like so sucked into the abyss. But it's hard. It's definitely not an easy book to write.
Well, here's an unbelievably unfair, unreasonable question, because the whole world, but let's be honest, the United States wants to fix this problem. A lot of us do. Maybe certain senators whose campaigns are funded by the NRA don't. Todd Young of Indiana. Oh, I remember your thoughts and prayers, Todd Young. I remember. Anyway, but I give you the magic wand. You've given this a great deal of consideration. You could do something that would, not end school shootings, but maybe curtail them. What's the first thing you'd do?
I would have increased restrictions around gun storage. I think is a huge issue, to have like laws and regulation around that, and all of the background checks and loopholes that we hear about. That should be the most simple. Like, that should be table stakes. Like, I have a lot more, I think, views on ways to fix it, but I would start with saying, I think those common sense measures that I can't believe that we don't pass. And then the last thing I will say, though, which is not at all to deflect the conversation away from guns, which I think there should be a big conversation about how many guns we have in this country and how easily it is to access them. 100% should be a part of the conversation solving it. But I do think that mental health for our young people, when we're talking about school shootings, needs to be addressed. I think we have this terrible climate of toxic masculinity that is mixing with underserved mental health treatment, and we have kids who are feeling isolated, and they have been raised in this culture that the only way to not feel ashamed and humiliated, or however they're feeling, is to be violent. And I think that collision of things needs to be addressed. We need to start having serious conversations about how we fix our culture of violence. I think a big part of the reason America has such a gun problem is because we have a lot of guns. Obviously, that's like the major component, but it's also we kind of valorize violence in all of the way we teach our history, the way we talk about ourselves as a country. And I think we need to have a real conversation about why are we a country that glorifies violence so much, and what is causing this problem that it's not uniquely American, but does feel disproportionately like we are a country that's grappling with this. There's something in our cultural media stream. And so I'm like a really personal, it's really personal to me as someone who has mental health issues. So I'm not demonizing anybody with mental health. I never want to make this equation that if you have mental health issues that you will or are violent. But I do think that we are massively underserved as a country when it comes to mental health, and especially our young people. And so I think like those would kind of be my baseline where I would start the conversation. Having more regulations around guns in a reasonable way, having a conversation about why someone needs a gun and who should own a gun and how they should have to store their gun, and then the mental health piece. But the book honestly doesn't engage with that at all. It's not about solutions. I hope that it will inspire people to want to talk about that, but it's more about creating a dialogue that forces us to talk about that this is the way it is for kids today. You know, it's meeting kind of the situation, I guess, where it is.
The solution, not a solution. We all have to live here with things as they are presently. And let's at least talk about that and acknowledge that it's not okay that we're living this way. Am I hearing that right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the like main point of the book is about that we have to dream bigger, like that we have to use our imaginations and come up with better solutions that we have come up with. Like, again, I don't think this is too much of a spoiler, but like that's where the idea of like the shape of thunder, which is the title, comes from, is this idea of like it's something we can't really imagine, right? But we have to use our imagination, and there's power in that like boldness of believing in something better and in the possibility of a better world. I think so often we've just become complacent, right? That we just decided this is just how it is. And okay, we're just gonna have our kids do lockdown drills all the time. And we're gonna hope it's not our kids' school. And we're gonna hope, you know, and that's just so maddening to me that it's like, that's the best we can come up with in this country that has invented so many things, that this paltry solution, that's our solution. And so I think that's really, to me, what I'm getting at with the book, is saying like, we can do better and we need to do better for our young people. Can't we do better? Can't we imagine something better? And kind of an ode to the fact that I really think it's our young people who can imagine something better, because I think sometimes we as grown-ups become complacent and have an inability to see kind of past what we've already tried.
Well, fortunately, you and I are having this conversation in 2021 and not 2020. Last year, I would have said, nope, it's all hopeless. There will never be anything good that could ever happen again. But this year, by God, I'm feeling pretty good. We were just talking before the show. I got my second dose of the vaccine. You're vaccinated. There is reason to be optimistic. There could possibly yet be a brighter tomorrow.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I really think so. I think it's a book. It's full of a lot of optimism, because I think we have to be. I think especially when you write for young people, you have to have hope. You have to have optimism, because that's what is going to move things forward, right? Is believing in a better solution and believing in a better possibility.